Hello, everyone. Welcome back to More Than a Muse podcast. My name is Sadie.
I'm Stauney, and it is officially the last episode of March.
It is the last episode of March coming out on April 1st because, joke's on you, we wanted to put out our March Madness episode a day late because we're always going to be celebrating feminine rage here. So here we are,
That's good
last episode of
reasoning for
March
it.
Madness. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, it is the last, but it never really stops.
It never stops.
And we're very excited about this one, actually. This has been a very fun one to look into, and I feel like it's a good little reading list if
Yes.
you're looking for inspiration.
Yeah. If you
how to handle
need to
things.
fuel your feminine rage fire, this is the ultimate book list for it because we have 4 different novels here that are all very much feminine rage inspired. What I was so surprised is just how recent a lot of them have been published.
So recent.
I just think that shows that a lot of times people think, oh, it's not the 20th century, women can vote, women can all these things. No, there's still a lot to be angry about. And a lot of these books really still dive into that, which I think is important.
No, I agree completely. But yeah, just a reminder before we get into it, merch is still available. It will be up, obviously, into the next couple of months. So definitely go check it out. If you are still waiting to get some, don't wait anymore.
It's never too late to join the Hysterical Society. Join us anytime.
And then subscribe, like, rate, review. I think we always say it at the end, but please do.
True.
We appreciate it so much. All of you who follow along and subscribe on all the things or leave reviews. We read them. We love them. So
yeah,
thank you.
We've gotten some comments on YouTube. Really appreciate. And you can come subscribe on YouTube as well. So
yes,
come
definitely.
check us out. Anyways, would you like to introduce the 4 novels that we are going to be talking about today?
I would love to. Obviously, we're talking about The Handmaid's Tale. How could we not?
Of course.
That is like the original.
Dystopian feminine rage. Yes.
The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, which came out in 1985. Definitely the oldest book we will be covering today. And then actually the other 3 of these appear on the best books to read after you've read The Handmaid's Tale list. It's like a couple of different lists that people have done, but it's become a very common theme that like after you read The Handmaid's Tale, you should check out these. So we've got Vox by Christina Dalker that came out in 2018. The Power by Naomi Alderman that came out in 2016. And Red Clocks that came out in 2018 as well by Alina Zumis. We'll be talking about all of them, how it fits in with feminine rage, and just, I don't know, the little takeaways that I feel like you can take from dystopian, scary novels about oppressing women.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've read The Handmaid's Tale. I read that a couple years ago, but I haven't had the chance yet to dive into these. We're going to say spoiler free with an asterisk here because we might accidentally, like, you'll know what's going to happen in these books, but yeah, we're still going to leave plenty of info out so that you can still go and read them, dissect them yourself, and we will join you in that.
And I don't think any of them are incredibly long either.
No, which is great.
Yeah, they're really good ones if you're just looking for something to get mad about. Or to think about.
Yeah, get mad about. I like that. Tell us about the first novel.
Okay, the first one we're going to talk about is Vox, actually, by Christina Dalker. Here's like the little synopsis. Vox is a futuristic dystopian novel by an American author named Christina Dalker, published in 2018. It's set in a near future United States. I love how so many times they're like the near future, and I'm like, ugh. Okay.
Hasn't even been 7 years and this is not looking great.
I know. I'm hoping we never reach this point because, it doesn't definitely make you think. It's where a totalitarian, religiously motivated government has seized power and stripped women of nearly all of their rights, including the ability to speak more than 100 words per day. And the way that they do this, they literally have a counter on them, and it shocks them if they go above the limit. And bad shocking. Like a little minor spoiler here, but according to one of the instances, a lady is very upset with something that has happened. And so she records herself saying a sentence and then has it repeat itself on a recording over and over again. And apparently, like, her hand ends up being completely burned off into a charred stump from this counter. So it's like not
It's not nothing.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's intended to harm you.
Mm-hmm.
And the story follows the protagonist, Dr. Jean McClellan, who was a former neurolinguist, which is very interesting, literally
Mm-hmm.
studying language, turned into a silent housewife as she navigates a world in which women are monitored by wrist counters and punished for exceeding their daily word limit. The novel explores themes of state control over women's voices and autonomy, obviously, the erosion of civil liberties under the guise of morality, the silencing of dissent, and the psychological and societal effects of enforced gender roles, serving as a stark warning about the fragility of rights and the consequences of political complacency. The title refers to, obviously, the Latin word for voice,
Mm-hmm.
encapsulating the central motif of speech as power. It's really cool too because I'm going to talk about the cover design. How can I not? They have the X of Vox going over the woman on the cover's mouth,
Oh, cool.
which genius. And then it was a bestseller. Of course, has a lot of comparisons to Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale for feminist dystopian themes. And it has been optioned for a television adaptation, which is really interesting,
Cool.
but that has
Mm-hmm.
not happened yet. But yeah, it's a very interesting concept, but I feel like it's meant to the extreme to prove the fact that like how harmful regulating speech can be. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's obviously why free speech is such a major part of the United States Constitution. It's harmful when you end up in a society where you can't talk and like you're not allowed to freely express your opinions. It was an interesting thing to look at, especially looking at recent developments in our country and
Yeah.
just certain situations where you start to question what consequences for speaking out should be.
That's what I was just going to say. And we talked about this last month when we talked
Mm-hmm.
about Octavia Butler, where she wrote a lot of dystopian novels. And in the More Than a Muse newsletter on Substack, just talked about the fact that a lot of the times the dystopian authors aren't necessarily like making crazy predictions. Like they are viewing things that are happening in the world around them right now, and they're
Mm-hmm.
taking them to maybe an extreme level. Whereas right here is it's not like an actual, oh, you're not allowed to talk, but it's if you talk about wrong things, if you talk about things in a way that people don't like, are there actual legitimate consequences for that? Is that happening
Yes.
right now? Do women feel like they can't speak out right
Mm-hmm.
now? So then, therefore, let's take that to an extreme end, per se, but also
Mm-hmm.
realize that there are consequences for what could be happening in the world right now. And you hope that it doesn't get to any kind of extreme, you
Yeah,
know?
definitely. No, it's
That's
really
what dystopian
interesting.
is. Dystopian novels and the genre does.
Yeah, seriously. No, and she did a lot of like really interesting things in this novel too. She has the protagonist be just a regular woman as far as politically. They knew what was happening. She was obviously very well educated, a doctor, but wasn't as politically focused as some of her friends were. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it said sometimes she forgot to vote. Like it wasn't
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
always the forefront of her mind, which I feel like is really relatable. It's easy to
Mm-hmm.
become complacent. And then her husband ends up becoming a part of this structure and serving as like a scientific, what's the word, advisor in the whole situation.
Oh,
And as a result of that, she has 2 sons and a daughter, and she has to watch as her kids turn into things that she doesn't really have control over. Because think about it, 100 words a day, we're probably already out of our limit just from
true.
this episode.
Yeah.
Of
And we're just at
like,
the start of our episode.
yeah, I just can't even imagine that would be gone so fast. So you'd
Mm.
really have to think about every single word. And that means that you can't necessarily sit down your teenage son and be like, look, you're turning into a misogynistic jerk. Let's have a conversation about that.
Yeah, like let's be real here.
Yeah, and so she has to watch as her son becomes like very into this whole thing because it favors him. Watches her daughter comes home from school one day with an award for not talking at all the entire day and realize that like she's teaching her daughter not to speak. Like
Yeah.
to not even have that be a part while she has that background in neurolinguistics and knows how important it is. So
Mm.
just interesting, like how crucial language and communication are for survival and how like fast could just completely disintegrate once it's taken away.
That is a
Yeah.
super interesting premise.
Very interesting.
The next one is called The Power. And what's interesting is that, like, also has an element of like shocking. So I just find it interesting that in 2 dystopian novels, like shocking and electricity is something that
Yeah.
is a thread that connects the two of these. The Power is of course, speculative science fiction dystopian novel by Naomi Alderman, like you mentioned, in 2016. And it's set in, again, a near future world where teenage girls suddenly develop the ability to emit electric shocks from their bodies. That is a power that can both be destructive and lethal. With this new force, that can also awaken in older women, it basically just rapidly shifts the global balance of power, leading to a radical upheaval of traditional gender dynamics. And the novel follows several interconnected characters. There's Roxy, who's a gangster's daughter, Tunde, a Nigerian journalist, Margot, an American politician, and Ali, who's a runaway who becomes a religious leader as they just navigate this transforming world. This novel explores themes of power, corruption, gender, and dominance, systemic oppression, and just the cyclical nature of violence. And like through this inversion that it has of the norms, it asks the questions of, okay, if women did have the upper hand physically and politically and socially, would this become like this beautiful utopia, or would there still be chaos? Would there still be violence? And the book is framed as a manuscript written thousands of years in the future, suggesting a complete rewriting of history and offering like a satirical lens on how power reshapes narratives. So the Power like opens with a letter from a male writer from the Men Writers Association. So it's basically like years in the future where they're like, now there's women's writing associations, but it's existing in this make-believe land. So the male writer from the Men Writers Association is asking Naomi Alderman to read his historical novel. And he like gushes praise about Alderman and thanks her profusely for her time. Then at the end of the novel, she writes to the young male writer, telling him the book is a strong effort, but found some of the details, such as the male-dominated armies, far-fetched, and believes a man-dominated society would be more gentle. She suggests that he might find more success with the book if he published it under a female name. So kind of, mirroring that. But I think the whole point of the novel is that we're actually just more alike than we really think. And we've talked about this a lot too, where it's like the idea that it's no, but like women are just the gentle, like more peaceful, better sex. That's not necessarily like a good thing to say, to put them on a pedestal. And maybe just you have to be careful of anyone having power that could like lethal, which like obviously it's just an overall look at power.
Yeah, I do always find it interesting. I'm sure you've seen a lot of things where it's like men fear matriarch societies because they fear that it would be the same level of oppression put on them that they've put on women and stuff like that, where it's like, a lot of the times I do think there's a lot of this assumptions like, if we were in charge, we would do it better. And technically, isn't that what everyone thinks? Like,
that's what everyone thinks.
Part of the issue? Every political party, every religious extremist group, like every single role, those they think that if they were put in charge, they would do better. And I think you're right. At the end of the day, we're all just human. There are differences between men and women, obviously.
There's differences in literally all of us. There's differences between me and you. But at the end of the day, we're all human.
So I think you're right. Like, I think there's a lot to fear about any segment of people having the majority
too much
of the
power.
Upper hand.
And exactly. This book won the 2017 Bailey's Woman Prize for Fiction and was named one of New York Times 10 best books of the year. It's been just really widely acclaimed for its take on feminist themes, and actually was adapted to a television series by Amazon Prime.
Which I've never heard of this.
I haven't heard of it either. I don't know if it was like just in the UK that it was like a thing. I don't know if that works for Amazon Prime, if it's like a regional thing, but
I have no idea.
I guess it didn't really make a lot of noise, but I thought it was really cool. And also I want to of course mention that The Power is Alderman's fourth novel, but it was also influenced by her relationship with Canadian novelist none other than Margaret Atwood. And I guess there was like even a mentorship through the Rolex mentorship program. And in an interview, though, this is something I saw, that she explained that the influence of Atwood's work on her as a novelist before the mentorship as, quote, I'd been to an Orthodox Jewish primary school where every morning the boys said, thank you, God, for not making me a woman. And then if you put that together with The Handmaid's Tale in your head, something will eventually go fizz boom, which makes sense. So, yeah, and then I know that Margaret Atwood had seen the novel as well, and that Margaret suggested that there should be like the idea of a convent in the book, and that she had roughly written 200,000 words of a novel before scrapping that draft at the end of 2013, changed the entire concept into what became The Power, based on about 2,000 words of the original effort. So,
Man.
definitely a labor of love.
Yeah,
And yeah,
sounds
seems
like
like
it.
a very interesting book to go check out.
Okay, the next one is The Handmaid's Tale, because
Of course.
yes,
Yeah,
like we're probably going to do a whole episode eventually on Margaret Atwood. How could we
absolutely.
not? This has got to be one of the most influential books of all time, right?
In the, yeah, maybe not of all time, but in the world of feminine
Mhm.
dystopian genre, dystopian period, I think it's, yeah, one of the biggest novels for sure.
I agree. Cool. So, The Handmaid's Tale, if you don't know anything about it, is a futuristic dystopian novel by Margaret Atwood, who's Canadian, by the way, if you didn't know, published in 1985. It is set in near future New England in a patriarchal, totalitarian, theonomic state known as the Republic of Gilead, which has overthrown the United States government. And Offred is the central character and narrator, and one of the handmaids, who are women who are forcibly assigned to produce children for the commanders or the ruling class in Gilead. The novel explores themes of powerless women in a patriarchal society. Wonder what that would be like. Lots of female agency and individuality, suppression of reproductive rights, and the various means by which women resist and try to gain individuality and independence. Apparently, the title actually comes from like parts of Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, because he
Oh.
had the Merchant's Tale and the Parson's Tale, like this idea of fairy tales where the central character tells the story. And so she based it off of The Handmaid's
Handmaid's
Tale.
Tale.
Yeah.
Cool.
Which I think is cool too, because a lot of those like Canterbury Tales are supposed to be like lessons too,
Yeah.
like just a story, but like
Almost like a
a lesson.
warning. Yeah.
Yeah. So very fitting. And The Handmaid's Tale won the 1985 Governor General's Award and the first Arthur C. Clarke Award. It also was nominated for the Nebula Award, the Booker Prize, and the Prometheus Award, and was included on the Big Jubilee Read list of 70 books by Commonwealth authors selected to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee of Elizabeth II. And it was adopted into a 1990 film, a 2000 opera, and the 2017 television series. And then she has written a sequel that was published in 2019. I didn't realize it was that recent. Actually, the sequel was published. I thought it was way earlier, called The Testaments. Handmaid's Tale is terrifying.
You're not wrong.
But yeah, like the whole idea, I think a lot behind it is that she's able to fight back with what's happening throughout her memories. So it goes throughout her whole story, but then has flashbacks a lot, which not only show you how something like this could even happen because it's so extreme you could even imagine, but then able to show also that like her mind is the only place that she has left that's hers.
Yeah.
They've literally claimed everything else. There's also a lot of things in it that are interesting. It talks about like most of the world is infertile, right? And so they use these handmaids as like the last fertile women to help to try to continue the generations of Gilead. But then it has so many like interesting parallels to things that show up all the time. The doctor offering to get her pregnant so that they'll leave her alone, because that's basically the only way that the handmaids find peace is if they're able to give the commander a baby. And her refusing because she doesn't want to get caught. But then it turning into this thing where they basically assume like the commander is infertile.
Yeah.
So then even his wife and like even him, I think at one point start trying to basically find a way to get her pregnant to prove that he's fertile, even if they're pretty sure he's not. So yeah, it's very interesting. And then yeah, her marriage that she had was declared, what's the word? I'm not a vocabulary person today. Oh, it's not legal anymore because her husband had been divorced previously. And so like the church does agree with that because they believe that you can only be married once. And just different ideas like that when they're taken to extremes, how harmful that can be.
Yeah.
And what happens to a lot of the women who defy like insane situation. But yeah, I think one of the powerful things about The Handmaid's Tale is even showing how like passive resistance can be powerful. She
Absolutely.
doesn't necessarily like outright do anything crazy about this whole thing. Um, but like through the whole thing, she's able to keep a part of her alive and then eventually rebel in her own way, ending up on the chopping block for the entire governmental system. So, yeah,
Have you seen the TV show?
I have. I didn't watch all of it. I had a really hard time with it,
That's
which
fair.
is so fair, I think, because yeah, I think it's one thing to read about it. It's another thing to actually like watch a lot of it
Visually see it.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, from my understanding, I think they tied in a lot of the testaments into the TV show.
I will be honest, I have not seen The Handmaid's Tale, which like
Okay.
that feels like a confession because how do I have a feminist podcast and also have
Yeah.
never seen The
That's okay.
Handmaid's
You've
Tale?
read it. I
I
haven't read
have
it
read it. I
completely.
have read it,
Yeah.
but I
No.
have not seen it. I know I feel like I know it's like a not just is it a feminist piece of media, but also I know it's
Yeah.
very critically acclaimed. But I think I've heard that it's not necessarily just like a telling of the book or
No,
like a
I was
redoing of that.
actually surprised when I read like the full synopsis of the book and the parts that I did read because I was like, that's not how the TV show plays. But
Yeah.
they definitely give, I think, a lot more context to things, but I also feel like they drag it out a little bit longer than the book, which I guess makes sense in some ways for a TV show. A lot of things. And then also, I think season 2 is completely post.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think,
Oh,
like you said, I so much of the book is her internal monologue, so that's like
mhm.
hard to put
Yeah.
into a TV show. But I think, like you were just talking about, I think that just like shows that, like, because obviously, like sometimes it feels like one person's actions, like, what are you gonna do in the
Yeah.
grand scheme of everything? But I do think that it does show that like she was able to survive. She was able to eventually find her own way to resist, and doing that, even it was like this, even if it started as the smallest things of like still maintaining the autonomy she could, and this, that she was able to then
Yeah.
overcome it in a way. And I think that we don't have to villainize each other for what we do to survive. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No, I completely agree.
And I think
'Cause, yeah.
that book makes that like really good
Mhm.
point for that.
Oh, 100%. No, and it's a really good way to look at it when it's like you're in these situations you can't even imagine. Even like people give women a bunch of crap for staying in like toxic relationships
Yeah.
and it's you know what? At a certain level, just the fact that you make it out alive is
Yeah,
all of
is
the
enough.
resistance. Yeah, that like you made it.
And who am I or who is anyone to ask someone to, like, in the situation of this book and the story, risk your life or do something? And then into like more modern real life scenario, it's like risk your livelihood, risk
Yeah.
your ability to put food on your family's table. Who are you to
Mhm.
demand that from someone
Yeah,
because they could be
definitely.
doing more?
One thing I loved that I read about the analysis of it was saying that like her rage manifests in small acts of defiance, even like stealing butter from the past or forming forbidden connections. So it's like
Yeah.
literally just doing tiny things that like she can't really get killed for, but that it's able to help keep that anger in her alive so that she can make it out
Yeah.
of it all. Like that's just as powerful, I think, in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, definitely a must read. Oh, and I was going to say, even if you don't want to watch the whole series, I think even if you just watch the first episode, it's like very striking. And I feel like it gives you a really good idea of what the whole thing is. Because, yeah, they do a very good job of showing like the different color tier system of the
Mm-hmm.
women that in a lot of the stuff, even in just one episode.
Yeah. The last book that we're going to talk about is Red Clocks by Lenny Zumes. And this is, again, a feminist dystopian novel. And it's set in an alternate version of contemporary America where abortion and vitro fertilization are illegal. And there's a new personhood amendment that grants full legal rights to embryos. And the story unfolds in like a small Oregon town and follows the intersecting lives of four women. Ro, who is a single high school teacher and historian, who is desperate to become a mother, Susan, who's a frustrated wife and mother stuck in a loveless marriage, Maddie, who's a pregnant teenager seeking a way out, and Jin, a reclusive herbalist and healer who becomes the target of a modern day witch hunt. And this novel explores themes, of course, reproductive freedom, bodily autonomy, and the policing of women's choices, and just the complexity of female identity and desire. It just paints a picture of a world where the state controls women's lives under the guise of protecting life. And the title refers to how time, biological, society, and political ticks relentlessly for women navigating system of powers.
Yeah.
And it was a finalist in the Orwell Prize for Political Fiction, won the Oregon Book Award for Fiction, and is praised for its poetic language and timely themes. And of course, has been compared to The Handmaid's Tale for its exploration of women's rights in a very eerie way. I like this quote that said, "In Red Clock's resistance is not glamorous, it's messy, fractured, and human. But through connection, even loose, imperfect ones, rage becomes a network." And yeah, because like I think all of these lives, like it's interesting because it's like on the surface, you would get the synopsis of all those women and all those characters and be like, oh, they're very different. But through this like one thing, they're all connecting. And I think that's true. Like at the end of the day, too, it's something that every woman has to go through and think about at the very least, you know, of do I want kids? How am I going to have kids? Or then am I going to choose not to have kids? And how is that going to affect things in my life? I wanted to bring up, have you seen?
I know, the chaperone quote is what you're going to talk about. I knew it.
Yes.
The minute you said that, I thought about that. Yeah, I saw it. I want to hear your thoughts because then I heard a really good analysis of it and it like, I don't know, changed a lot of things for me. And
so I watched the Call Her Daddy interview because I love Chaperone. And like people don't like her. I'm going to be a Chaperone apologist till the day I die. I feel like when she talks, I understand it can come across as like negative or whatever. I don't care. I think she keeps it real. I think she talks how she would really talk. And I don't mind it. But also, too, I'm fine disagreeing. Not everything that comes out of her mouth, I'm like, yes, but I find her very interesting. I like her. I'm intrigued by what she has to say. The first time I heard that, it didn't bother me because I've felt that way too, and I worry about that for myself. Like I remember thinking that of, a lot of people I know who have kids, they don't seem to like it. They seem to never make music again. They seem to give up all of their dreams after they become mothers. And so therefore that is something I've been very fearful of and I've had to unpack in my brain. So initially I didn't even catch that as a standout of the interview per se. Because for one thing, it didn't surprise me that's what she had to say.
Oh, no. Are you kidding?
Are we shocked here?
No,
that's what
I wasn't surprised. Think? Yeah.
Two, I've had those same fears about myself as someone who does want to be a mother and have kids one day.
Yeah.
In that way, it like didn't bother me. But then I did see online like women then talking about, no, motherhood brings me joy. And like I saw one person saying like me before motherhood and me before after, and like their glow up was beautiful and amazing. Like they had a glow up legitimately. And it was nice to see it, that I was like, oh cool, people are finally talking about motherhood in a good way. To be honest, like I don't see that a lot online. But then the other side of it that people have been saying is it's like there is a war on motherhood, because that's the thing. People have been like, oh, there's a war on motherhood. She's being mean to women. First off, she did never say mothers. She said parents.
Yeah.
Of course, we all know that now it seems like parent is basically who's the one who does most of the parenting. It's always the mother.
And that's an issue.
And that's an issue.
Yes.
But like talking about that, like there is like a war on motherhood, but like it's not Chaperone making those comments. It's the fact that like women, like they don't actually have the support. One, they don't maybe have as many choices to become mothers. Like that this society that we've created isn't creating an environment where it feels even possible to have kids and things like that. So that's where I'm currently standing with that. I wasn't that mad about it, but also I'm not a mother, so I understand if it struck a chord to other people.
I agree. Like also don't have kids. And when I heard her say it, the thing that I was like getting tripped out by, people were getting so offended, is she said all of the people I know
that
have kids are in hell. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's what
She's
she was talking
really
about
young.
her life.
Yeah, she is really young. She's what, 22, if that?
Oh, I hate Chaperone is actually 27. She is our age.
Is she really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So
why did I
maybe
think
that
she was
changes
so
things.
young?
No,
it's
Chaperone
okay.
is just turned 27.
Okay. No, that's good to know. But
So
yeah,
maybe that changes. Not sure.
not completely. She's still 2 years younger than me. But like people our age got married a long time ago in Utah. Like we've had friends that have been married and have kids for years. And it's still
I have 6 to 7 year olds. Yeah.
Yes. And it's still not entirely typical in the world that we live in now for women even our age to have a bunch of children. A lot of people who are our age are getting started on their first. So to hear her kind of talk about all the people I know and then realizing she didn't necessarily grow up in like this wealthy neighborhood where people had options. She grew up in the South in a more rural area where education, sex education wise, and a lot of other things were probably pretty similar to ours, to be fair. And it isn't, motherhood's not looked at as an option of what you can do.
And also, it's presented as the end of your life.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's okay, you're going to grow up and you're going to become a mom when you're 23, and now you're not going to do anything else with your life except for have kids.
Yes.
And that's a great thing. So it's very typical to be like, okay, cool, I'm going to have kids. Yes. And then not think about, wait, what else could I do with my life? And then that's it.
To the point where girls literally structure their entire education, their entire future career, everything off of what will work once they're a mom.
Yeah.
So many people we knew, so many of our friends.
Even still, like with me choosing to be a musician, I feel like I've even had to still be like, no, you're doing this for real. You're doing this for real. Because it's so easy for me in my brain to be like, oh, no. Like the reason why I was like, yeah, go be a music teacher, because it'll be really easy for you to do vocal lessons when you have kids. That is the thing I like internally told myself for so long that I'm still unpacking it, of being like, no, you want to do this for real. Like you're not doing this as a placeholder thing to fill your time until you have a baby. And that's hard. Like that is something I am like literally unpacking still every day of my life.
No, and like even I like choosing graphic design and then people saying, oh, that's such a good mom job. Like so many times.
It's such a good mom job.
Yes.
That is the only context that I thought about my future and what I could do with my life was through the lens of, but can you be a mom? Can you be there for your kids still most of the time? And it's important.
To which I answer, every freaking job is a mom job. Oh my gosh. You can raise children and literally do any career in the world. It's But
if dads just like can have jobs and not have to worry about having a good dad job.
Yes. Obviously the same is possible for women. So like when I heard her say it, I think it was under the same guise where I was like, okay, like if her education and upbringing was anything like ours, like
that makes sense.
Makes sense. You would look at it and you would be like, she has chosen the exact opposite of probably what her upbringing was telling her. Like not only with her sexual orientation, which like good for her, honestly. Like I can't even imagine how hard that would be. But then also like to go and say, I'm going to go be a pop star. And
like I'm moving to LA and I'm going to literally put everything I possibly can into making this a thing.
That is literally saying F you, basically, to everything that she grew up hearing about how, like, you have to be a mom. The only option, that is your biological destiny. Like, you don't get to do anything else.
Yeah.
So, like, hearing her say that, I was, that makes sense for Chapel.
Yeah.
Duh.
Exactly.
Like, how else is she supposed to look at it when that's the context of her life? But then it's obviously there's women out there who love being a mother.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times those are women who were able to have the choice, that were able to plan for a family, a person who's actual and equal partner in the whole situation, and not someone who ended up pregnant at 16, stuck with a deadbeat dad who's not doing crap, and she now has no idea what she's going to do with her life because she can't leave because she doesn't have an income. And so it's just motherhood can be hell for a lot of people, and I think that's an important thing to remember. Scenarios, but it's also that's not how it happens for everybody. Just like, there's a lot of careers that probably would have been hell on earth for me, but like
true,
for other people it's a wonderful thing. So I was just like, for Chapel, that makes sense. And she put it in the whole phrase of everyone I know, which I think, and she does not know these anonymous women on the internet who are jumping on and saying, I have 4 kids, my life is beautiful. Like, no, you.
Yeah.
So,
I've seen some people say that sucks for her to like air out her friend's problems. Imagine talking to your friend and then she talks about it on a podcast. But like, who are we? Who knows? I don't know what her friends thought about that. I as someone who, like I said, like I want to be a mom, and I'm also like getting to the age where like things are happening in my brain where I like see a baby and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want one. Like that is happening to me. I'm like starting to get old enough where I'm like, oh, but I could like just kiss a baby's head right now. I don't know. I'm feeling those urges.
From us, we've talked about it. Like, how would this work? How are we able to fulfill our passions? How does it continue? You have this new obligation.
And it changes things, of course. And like the truth is like, I do like with the current world we're living in right now, it's not set up in a way to help mothers and families, which is ironic because it's, hello, Mr. Traditional Family. If you want to preach the gospel of have kids, have a good family, okay, make it maybe possible.
Give some tax.
But like, not even, I don't know, like.
No, literally, I think it's a very good point. If you want a traditional family, okay, then make a one-income household possible.
It's not a possibility in America right now.
Yeah, owning a home possible.
Exactly. And that's the thing that I do mourn right now is the fact that I'm like, okay, I'm now starting to be at the age where I want to have a baby. I'm really excited to have a baby one day. And I do think it's going to be a joyous thing in my life. I have a partner that I trust to be 100% there with me all the time. And I'm like ready for that chapter. I know it's not going to happen for a couple of years, but like the other part of it is, okay, in a dream world, I would like to have a home that my baby can come to. I don't want to be in and out of apartments every year or two. And granted, like, of course, I'm not demonizing that because I know that is like the situation for a lot of people, of course. But I think we all have an ideal world, right? Where we have a beautiful home with the front lawn where we could have a dog and with the baby and they could go running and be safe in the streets. This is this dream world that I imagined for myself as a kid. And now as I'm like nearing that age to now have it, I'm like, oh, that's not really possible. And I'm already going to have to make sacrifices in the way that I bring a child into this world because like, how are we both going to work? Like there's just so many things that's like, it's really hard right now to decide to bring a child into the world. And therefore like motherhood and parenthood does become harder because of the economic state of our world, of our country right now and everything that's going on. It feels scarier to bring a kid into the world. And so I can mourn that.
There's a body risk right now too. Like you are literally putting yourself in a potential life-threatening situation.
Yeah, when you get pregnant. That is feeling more real than it did. Of course, like when you're growing up, you have this rose-colored view of how the world's going to be, but
like in movies, it's different. Like her water breaks, one push and the baby's out. And
exactly.
Fine.
Like, of course, like you just, some of that is just like education and just like learning more about what actually is going on when you get older. But also I think the world's changing and it's making me, as someone who's always wanted kids and wants to have kids soon, have to reckon with that a little bit. And so I don't really blame Chaperone for what she had to say.
Yeah, I was like,
and
honestly,
maybe that's a hot take, but
and for her, I fully believe that if she were to become a mother right now, it would be absolute hell for her personally. You know, like true. That's what she wants. So she's probably looking at some of her friends going, "Oh my gosh, you give me enough money to do that." So I think it's also just shedding light on the idea that like, you should be able to have that choice.
Yeah.
One thing that I've been thinking about a lot with seeing all of this where people are like, no, motherhood is so beautiful. I would never regret it. And then it's, I get that, but that's your life. Like,
and isn't that like
experience?
Also too, like revel in that. Say this is a beautiful thing. Like I'm so lucky that my motherhood experience has been beautiful. Like you don't have to feel threatened by the fact that somebody else is maybe not perfectly happy in a similar choice you made. You like feel joy then.
Got lucky, honestly. Statistically, like you got lucky compared to a lot of situations.
Yeah, no one's here to attack you or diminish the joy in your life. Just say, cool, she's not talking about me because I feel joy in this. And let's point to what's actually causing this war on motherhood. And it's not people demonizing this. One thing that I did hear though that I actually appreciated is this woman on TikTok was talking about the fact of the problem with what Chaperone says is it comes across that like she just hates kids. And she's like, maybe she doesn't, but there are a lot of people out there and a lot of adults who genuinely seem to hate kids, and they make all of their content and their whole personality about being child free. And she's imagine me making my content revolve around the fact that I don't have tattoos. Like, how are you going to make your whole personality about something you don't have?
No, and to that I will counter with saying I did see her interact with a very small, tiny fan.
That's so true.
Who was like 2 years old, and she was the sweetest person on earth, and so terrified that she was scaring her with her drag makeup.
No, like, she was adorable. I did see that video too, and I don't think it necessarily is a point on Chapel, but I think it was a good point on overall society of like people being like, oh, child-free spaces, like children shouldn't be in public, like this and this. Where it's no, children by definition are the most vulnerable people in society.
Yes, 100%.
And it says a lot about us as people with how we treat the most vulnerable people in society, elderly people. So if you're going to say they're annoying to me, I don't want them to be in my space. It's sorry. Welcome to planet Earth. There are children. And also you were once a child.
Yes.
So get used to it. And I thought that was like the one point that I was like,
that's a good point.
Fair.
And I think there's a lot of things to consider about the whole like child-free living and glamorizing that in a lot of ways too, where it's you know what? It is really freeing to not have a kid. I could be the first one to tell you that. Like, very, very
it's
freeing.
Really great to not have a kid right now. That would bring a lot of stress to my life.
You do miss out on a lot. And I think that's important to realize too, that it's like, there's something beautiful, I think, about having someone to come home to who loves you unconditionally. And like the only two things that can do that are children and animals. I'm sorry. It's the truth. Like, you want unconditional love, you're only getting it from a child.
That's how they grow up.
But still over that short period of time. And even later on, even though they'll say, I hate you, mom, like, I'm sure there's still, you always love your parents. So theory, like hopefully. There is as long as with all but I think that it's important to realize that there's benefits in both situations, and I think that's why people talk about seasons of your life and like how different things have different times and seasons. And for people who aren't able to have children too, that's like a whole other thing. Like it's just so much more complicated than like a motherhood is great and not having kids is horrible or vice versa. It's just like there's so much more going on in this situation.
There's validity in all choices, and find the joy in your life.
Because even personally, like I was ready to have kids like 5 years ago, and then restart your entire life. And there's a lot of sadness involved in that, where it's I look and I expected to have kids the same time as my best friend, and she's done and I haven't even started. So that's like a whole other level to look at it. But then also to realize, look at how much I've been able to do career-wise and creatively and traveling and all sorts of things that I don't think would have been as possible if I would have been having children at 23. It's just, I think it's just such a personal thing that it doesn't need to be such like a blanket assumption from anybody.
Not. I always think back to that TikTok. There's a girl who's making this content, and it's like me, where it's like, what do you think about Botox? She's like, on one hand, this, but then also we live in a society, so we really can't judge. But also, I don't think this. And it's like acknowledging every potential like counterpoint and like discourse. And sometimes I do feel that way.
Literally.
But it is layered. Like, I don't want to accidentally invalidate anyone here. But
and I think it is really hard for us because like I know how we grew up, and then also, but looking at it, we're both here like the same age, and neither of us have children yet. And would either of us have expected this?
No. I have to remind myself, is 27 old? I don't know, because like my whole life I thought that was like going to be a decrepit age where I was going to have 3 children and my life would be like pretty much set now. And I'm like, the whole world is still my oyster here, and I wasn't expecting that.
I know. And I'm just looking at like, okay, like there's time, and I think
there's always time. Anyways, thank you for joining us with our discourse on motherhood today. And of course, it was going to come up with a feminine rage topic. We haven't discussed it yet. What a way to end March Madness.
We actually haven't talked about motherhood, I think, in quite a while.
Can you tell we have very complex thoughts about?
Oh, yes.
That we personal thoughts too.
Yeah. And like, I think both of us have seen good and bad examples and situations and stories. So, like, we're open to that, I guess. So we're willing to hear them.
Totally. Would love to hear thoughts.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you for joining us for
Mhm.
March Madness. It's always so fun to have this month where I can just learn more about feminism and history, feminist history in
Yeah.
general, and just revel in the fact that women get to be mad, we get to be hysterical, and
Yes.
it's important to speak out about the things that you're mad about and that
Oh,
you have every
it
right to be mad about.
is. Yeah, I think like the whole theme that we wanted to share with these novels is rebellion.
Mhm.
Staying angry keeps you alive. It keeps you
Yeah.
moving forward. Like it helps you survive situations. Like,
Mhm.
anger is powerful. And that's why there's the phrase like angry women will change the world. It's why we spend all of March celebrating it, because it's literally what's going to get us through all of this until one day we live in a perfect utopia where everyone is equal.
So true.
So yeah, rage is that tool, that weapon, and everything that will help us, I think, remember who we are, where we've been, and hopefully where we're going to end up.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Awesome. We will be back next week. March might be over, but the
Mhm.
feminine rage never ends.
Oh,
So we'll be
never.
back next week with another episode about, we finally get to do an artist episode. It's been a while since we've got to focus on one woman. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, we take a break during March, but excited to get back to your regularly scheduled programming. And yeah, just a reminder, merch is still up. Please go check it out. Like, even if you're just curious.
It's pretty cute.
Yeah, very proud. And I've got to say, like, literally, sweatshirts, hoodies, and t-shirts are the best materials we've ever done. Yeah, even if you just want a cozy t-shirt or hoodie or sweatshirt.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Cool.
Amazing. Cool. We'll be back next Monday.
Bye.
Bye.